Well, they say records were meant to be broken, and Hurricane Beryl has done just that. As of 11 p.m. Eastern Time, hurricane hunters found winds of about 160 miles per hour in Hurricane Beryl's core, making it a Category 5 hurricane. Of course, the first of this year, but most importantly, it is the earliest Category 5 hurricane in the Atlantic ever, and it's really not that close. You're seeing the current infrared satellite, and what you're looking at right now are some of those storm tops in the storm, and you can see all that new convection already blowing up again. Those are those darker colors, the black and even the white colors in the middle. That indicates colder cloud temperatures, which indicates basically stronger and taller storms. And when you have a lot of that around the center of the storm, like we're seeing in Beryl, that's a sign that the storm is quite strong. And that's the eye wall you're looking at, where you have most of those black and white colors, those cloud tops around the eye. We can go back and reference what it looked like earlier today as it made landfall in the Windward Islands, part of the Lesser Antilles, and you can see that eye passing right over a couple of the smaller islands out there. Again, you can see that thing throughout the day as it, and by day I'm referring to Monday. You can see as it passed through those islands. It's a Category 4, but of course it has strengthened since then. And this is the southernmost Category 4 hurricane on record too. That's why these storms, while they do get hurricanes, these islands I should say, while they do get hurricanes, they typically don't see hurricanes of this power. A lot of firsts with this storm, and you can just see how strong it is. You can see those thunderstorms popping up around the eye wall. That's just a sign of a very healthy hurricane, and one that has since strengthened. And this was the last look that we've seen of it as a Category 4. Because it's nighttime, we haven't actually seen visible imagery of it as a Category 5, but that's what that infrared imagery was for. Why is this in a league of its own? Not only is it the southernmost Category 4, but what you're looking at on the map here is actually the only other Category 5 hurricane ever in the month of July. This was Emily back in 2005, but the thing is, it's this point right here where it reached briefly Category 5 strength. Again, very briefly, and that was July 16th. That was the day that it reached Category 5 strength, and that's the only other day that has seen a Category 5 hurricane in the Atlantic. It is not only the earliest Category 4 hurricane on record in the Atlantic, I'm referring to my notes by the way, it's also the earliest Category 5 in the Atlantic as well, obviously, if it's the earliest Category 4. And something else that was really interesting to note was that over the weekend, Saturday into Sunday, it went from tropical storm to major hurricane. That was still in June, by the way. And that's the fastest intensification, the only time we've ever seen a storm go from tropical storm to major hurricane in 24 hours in the month of June. And I believe that may be the case in the month of July too. But regardless, setting all kinds of records here. One of the impressive things is that not only is it the earliest Category 5, but it just blew Emily out of the water, and every other storm, of course, beating it by a good 15 days. I mean, that's half a month, and that's a lot in hurricane season. Part of the reason for that, of course, the warm waters, and you can see these are your sea surface temperature anomalies, and basically all those orange colors you're seeing, especially out towards the Windward Islands, which are towards the right side of your screen. I mean, that's where the storm passed through. All those colors to the east, west, north, south, everything in the tropical Atlantic and western Atlantic here, for the most part, is very warm. In fact, we are seeing water temperatures in the tropical Atlantic that are as warm now in the very beginning of July, even in late June, it was already the case. They're just as warm now as they are supposed to be, or I shouldn't say that, but on average, where they would be at peak season in September. So we are way ahead of schedule. I mean, it's basically off the charts how warm these waters are for this time of year. With the warm waters, which have been well documented and forecasted now, and along with a La Nina, which is going to bring generally weaker wind shear, this season has the perfect ingredients to create some very powerful storms. And I mean, the fact that we're already setting records with a Category 5 this early speaks volumes to what may be ahead here. Let's take a look at our forecast, by the way. This is, of course, from the National Hurricane Center. You can see Beryl right here is, beyond the Lesser Antilles now. Its next stop is going to be in Jamaica, so we still have some time before it makes another major landfall. it will begin to weaken. You can see those M's there. Those basically tell you whether it's going to be a Cat 3 or stronger per their forecast, and they expect it will be a Category 3 hurricane as it approaches Jamaica. This is going to continue to move westward, eventually impacting the Yucatan Peninsula. So if you know anyone going to Cancun, well, they might want to rebook. It could be a bit rainy, could be a bit stormy. The storm is at least compact, and Cancun is going to be fine, assuming this forecast verifies and it's a weaker hurricane. They can handle this. The thing that gets a little more interesting is what happens after it impacts the Yucatan Peninsula, because there are a few different directions it could go and a couple different varying strengths. The reason it is going to weaken, by the way, we are not going to stay Cat 5 for long here. In fact, if you're watching this Tuesday morning, there's a chance this could already be weakened back down to a Cat 4. The reason for that weakening is what you're seeing here. You see those red colors right there? They sort of stretch out from, well, I guess sort of, it's Central America out here, across the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and out into the Atlantic. This is a streak of higher wind shear. And the wind shear is what will ultimately weaken our hurricane. It's less favorable. You can see it's been in an area where, and it's currently turning around in an area where wind shear has been very weak, and that has been very much to Beryl's favor. Here are some of our hurricane tracks. These are some of the hurricane models, and you can see there's strong agreement. This is going to pass in the very close vicinity of Jamaica, perhaps just south of the island. It will impact the Yucatan Peninsula. And then after that, you can kind of see out towards the western part of the Gulf, there's some question marks about what happens with this storm. It does seem like the most agreement is that this storm does get taken into Mexico, where it eventually will die out. But there are some members, and we've seen more and more trending a little bit farther northwards as it approaches that western Gulf shoreline. Now, what that may do would be basically nudge the core of the storm closer to Texas, and this would be much later in the week. But whereas it looked more likely this would just take a straight shot west, make landfall in the Yucatan, make landfall in more mainland Mexico after that. It does seem as though Texas may be in play. I know you're seeing the one member there taking it towards Louisiana. It seems to be a loner right now. I'll mention the GFS, though, is a little bit farther north as well, so you could cluster it in there if I were to lay it on top. But I'd say, right now, Mexico still looks like the most likely area of impact. The National Hurricane Center showed that as well, but Texas not completely out of play yet. Remember, this storm approaches Jamaica in about 48 hours, and you can see about 48 hours from now, we're looking at basically pretty strong agreement that this storm is going to be down to a Cat 2. However, there are still plenty of members that keep this storm as a Cat 3 as it passes Jamaica. And I will say, with how unusual this storm has been, with how strong it's been relative to expectations, wouldn't be shocked if we still have a major hurricane making a pass just south of Jamaica. Jamaica. Now, the good news is that it is a compact storm, so those Category 3 winds likely would not actually impact the island, but the tropical storm force winds very likely would. As the storm continues to move farther to the west, you're noticing that quite obvious downward weakening trend. Most of those members, you can see around hour 100, are going to take it back down to a tropical storm there. But there are still a cluster of members that keep this thing relatively strong, around a strong Cat 2 at that. If this storm does stay a stronger Cat 2, that could mean, of course, greater impacts on the Yucatan. It also makes things more interesting as it approaches the western Gulf. That could be Texas. That could be Mexico. Many of these members, do show somewhat of a rebound after it crosses the Yucatan. So perhaps it impacts the Yucatan, goes back down to tropical storm strength, and then as it gets back into some more of those favorable waters, it could strengthen back to a Cat 1 before making landfall again, and that would basically give it 3 separate landfalls as a hurricane. What I would expect to see here is, again, I do believe this is going to be about a Cat 3 as it passes Jamaica. Cat 3 seems most likely, just given everything we've seen so far. It is going to weaken, of course, as it impacts the Yucatan. It's just going to be over land for a bit too long, and it has a pretty compact core, of course. So that could take it down to a Cat 1, perhaps tropical storm. But I do see more and more trending towards a bit of a re-strengthening as it crosses back into the Gulf and approaches the western Gulf. So perhaps we see a Category 1 or perhaps even to landfall as it impacts likely the Mexican coastline, but potentially Texas coastline too. That said, there's a lot we don't know yet, and that is something that we're just going to need to watch as it all evolves. Again, what you're witnessing right now is history. Earliest Category 5 hurricane in the Atlantic ever, and really just unprecedented for this time of year, for the location it's in. Hurricane Beryl is a name that we will remember. This name almost definitely is going to be retired here. I can't see any situation in which it wouldn't be, at least. And yeah, you're witnessing history. This is one to remember. If you are in any areas that may be impacted, pay very close attention to this forecast. Follow what your officials are saying, and keep up with this. And if not, you're just interested in hurricane season, well, buckle up, because this is likely a sign of more to come this season. And we've been talking about it basically since the winter, how potent this season may be. And, I really think the bar was set high, and perhaps it's being raised even more right now. So can't understate enough how serious this season is going to be and how closely we'll need to watch. So wherever you are, stay safe, stay informed, and we'll keep you updated right here.